Hey mathematicians. All right, in this lesson, we're actually going to be covering three targets. We're going to be multiplying whole numbers by whole numbers, we're going to be multiplying whole numbers by fractions, and then we're also going to be multiplying fractions by fractions. And in all of these examples and all of these targets, we're actually going to be using a ruler and a number line. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so the first one is 3 times 2. Now, multiplication is actually thought of in a couple different ways. One way that people think about multiplication is through repeated addition. So repeating the same number over and over with addition. The other way to think about multiplication is making groups. And so like in this example here, 3 times 2 is actually asking what are 3 groups of 2? And one way that we can show this is maybe with a picture. And so I might start with 3 groups of 2. So I'm going to use triangles here. And I'm actually going to make 3 groups of 2. And you can see here as I'm drawing that I'm actually making 3 groups of 2. Here's one group, 2 groups, and 3 groups of 2, which gives us a total of 6 objects, or 6 triangles in this case. Now, the other tool that we could use that we're going to focus on today is the number line, or a ruler. And as you can see here, I have a number line and I have a ruler. I'm going to set the ruler right here at 0 on my number line. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to show 3 groups of 2. So if I label my ruler, if I label my number line with my ruler here, you can start to see these are all inches, whole groups, right? A whole inch. And if I look, this is one group of 2. Here is a second group of 2. And finally, here would be a third group of 2. And this puts me right here at 6. So using a ruler or a number line, I can actually create groups of whole amounts. All right, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try this. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to show me what are 3 groups of 3, or 3 times 3, using the ruler and the number line. All right, so you've paused it, you've shown your work. Here's how I would show my thinking. Again, I'm going to label my number line with the whole group numbers, 1, 2, 3. These are all whole inches or whole amounts. And I'm actually going to make 3 groups of 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. Here's a group of 3. Here is a second group of 3. That's 2 groups of 3. And then finally, I'll have a third group of 3, which puts me on the ruler at 9. So 3 groups of 3 is 9. Okay, mathematicians, let me show you now another example here of our second target, which is 2 times 1/2. Or again, you can think of it as repeated addition. You would have 2, or you'd have 1/2, 2 times, or we could think of them as groups, right? You can think of 2 groups of 1/2. And I'm going to just be using the ruler this time. And you can see I've used an enlarged ruler so we can see a little bit easier what I'm going to be doing. And here's what I'm going to look at. On the ruler, this is the halfway point right here. This is half an inch. So this is 1/2. And basically what it's asking me to make are 2 groups of 1/2. So here would be one group of 1/2. You can see that's one group of 1/2. And then here would be a second group of 1/2. Where does that put me on the number line? It puts me at 1 inch. So what I know is that 2 groups times 1/2, or 2 groups of 1/2, is 1. All right, mathematicians, here's another example of a whole number multiplied by a fraction. What are 3 groups of 3/4? If you would please pause the video, and then on your own paper, would you show your thinking about how you would solve 3 groups of 3/4? Thanks for pausing. All right, cool. So now that you paused, here's how I'm going to show my thinking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find 3/4 on the number line. Okay, so here's 3/4. And now I'm going to go another 3/4. So here's 1/4, here's 2/4, and then there's 3/4. This is a group of 3/4. That's one whole group of 3/4. I need to make 3 of those. So let me look at my ruler and my number line, and I'm gonna just go another 3/4. So here would be, right here would be another 4th. Here's the 4th line, and here's another one. So this would be 1, 2, 3/4, and I'm going to go all the way to there. You can see now I've got 2 groups of 3/4. I'm going to do it again. Here's the 1/4 mark, here's the 1/4 mark, and here's the 1/4 mark. So there's 1, 2, 3. That's a group of 3/4. And I'm going to make another group of 3/4, and here I am on the number line right here. Well, I need to find out where is that point. I can look at, here's the whole number, 2 and 1/4. So 3 groups of 3/4 is 2 and 1/4. I've made 3 whole groups of 3/4, and I ended up on the ruler at 2 and 1/4. All right, mathematicians, for our last target here, we're actually going to be multiplying a fraction by a fraction. Now again, if you think about making groups, this is the same idea as a whole number by a whole number. It's the same idea as a whole number by a fraction. This time though, we're going to take and find 1/2 groups of 1/2. So we need to think about, what are the size of the groups? Well, the first group that we have is a half, meaning we're going to be finding half of a group of 1/2. So here is the 1/2 mark on the ruler. And I'm looking to make a group that is half that size. So I'm going to make a group 1/2 of that size. Now if I look at my ruler here, I can see that actually right here is the halfway point between 0 and 1/2. If I split 1/2 into half, I would be looking at this much right here. That is 1/2. Now on the ruler, this point here is 1/4. Now if I look at it again, 1/4, 2/4. Oh, that makes sense. Half of 2/4 is 1/4. So 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. Now I'm going to give you another last example here, 1/2 times 1/4. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to do this work on your own, on your paper. Use a ruler to help you. But what you're finding is, what are 1/2 groups of 1/4? So remember, you start out with, well, I'll let you figure out what you start out with. Go ahead and pause the video and get started. All right, mathematicians, so here's what I know. I know that I'm starting with 1/4. I'm actually trying to find a half of that. So on my number line on my ruler, I'm going to label 1/4. Here it is. That's how much I have. I have 1/4, and we're going to make 1/2 of a group of that amount. So if I look at my number line, can I find the halfway mark between 0 and 1/4? And actually I can, it's right here. If I look at my number line, I can see now that I've split that exactly into half. And 1/2 of that is right here. This mark on the ruler is 1/8. That would make sense because 1/4 is the same as 2/8. And half of 2/8 is 1/8. So 1/2 times 1/4, or 1/2 groups of 1/4, is 1/8. All right, mathematicians, in this lesson we multiplied whole numbers by whole numbers, we multiplied whole numbers by fractions, and fractions by fractions using a ruler and a number line.